Hello, Katie. Good evening.
Good evening, Bruce. How are you?
I'm good. We're having internet issues here. I've just had a sign it's unstable. So if I disappear, Katie, can you just keep talking?
Sure. Hopefully you don't
Can you
disappear.
hear me? Come in, Katie. So hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Bruce?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Very good. We've got a delay. So anyone coming on here, there's a bit of a delay. Katie is in California, but the internet is not normally has that much of a delay on it. So my one should settle. It normally gets a bit unstable at this time in the evenings, but that should clear. Anyway, we'll let Katie. How are you? What have you been up to?
I'm good. What have I been up to? So I was just telling you before we hit record that April was just like an insanely busy month. Just happened to have a bunch of things scheduled, but went to a conference, one of those things that I did, and an addiction conference here. It was in Washington, D.C., and it was insightful. It's really interesting how you go to these addiction conferences. I've been to a few now, and they're so focused on opiate use disorder, which I recognize is an issue, but it's interesting that alcohol hardly has any attention there. But had some really good conversations with doctors who are aware of naltrexone, and some were using it following the Sinclair method, some were using it daily. But it was nice to see that most of the physicians I talked to were aware of naltrexone. So that was positive. What about
Very
you?
good.
What's new with you?
And I've kind of not a lot really. We're trying to get a new platform up and running, as you know, but we haven't
Yeah.
released any information on it yet. So, about that, here's the man.
Is there anything you
So,
want to
yeah,
say
we're
about
looking
that
at
or
setting a
not
new
yet?
platform up, and I'm co-founding it with Matt. I think I'll hold off at the moment. I really need to chat with. All I can say is Matt, who's in the chat, and I are doing something behind the scenes at the moment. So, yeah, when we're ready, I think we'll then put out the information and stuff. So, but yeah, we are up to something. We're up to no good in the background. So yeah, we've got it. I've advertised in a few places as well at the moment. Couple of different places. So could you just give a quick run over as to what the Sinclair method is and how it works? It's probably a good place to start.
Yeah. Hello to everyone who's here. Welcome. Good to be here with you all. So the Sinclair method is honestly a revolutionary treatment for alcohol use disorder, alcohol addiction. That is not like anything else that's out there. In fact, it kind of turns the traditional belief system and treatment system on its head about what it means to recover from alcohol addiction. What's so unique about the method is abstinence isn't required. In fact, the method requires someone to keep drinking, but they drink following the protocol, the Sinclair method, which is to take naltrexone, an opiate blocker medication, 1 hour before drinking. And when someone takes this medicine, and it sinks into their system and then they drink on it, what the medicine is doing is essentially blocking the euphoric effects or the reward from alcohol. And, the reason that we've developed an addiction in the first place to it is because it's so rewarding for our brain, and our brain loves things that give it pleasure. It's human nature. You can think about anything that feels good. We want to do it again. So that's how we can develop an alcohol addiction. So if you drink on naltrexone and that reward is blocked, and you do that repeatedly over and over again, your brain starts to decouple alcohol equaling a reward. And so it gradually stops seeing alcohol as a reward. And what happens as a result of that is people just have less interest in drinking. It doesn't mean they're going alcohol free. What it means is maybe they'll enjoy a couple of drinks, a couple times a week and be satisfied with that. Or, maybe they'll just notice they have more control in general when they drink. One of the biggest signs I noticed was my craving for alcohol was decreasing. Whereas before, I would just think about drinking starting at 11 a.m. every day. And should I drink? Should I not drink? Oh, I've been drinking too much. I need to have an alcohol-free day. Oh, but I want to drink. Just this internal conflict that started to quiet down and eventually became completely silent through this treatment. But naltrexone, it doesn't make people sick. It doesn't make drinking an unpleasurable experience. It just makes it a little bit less interesting.
And why do you think again, we've possibly got a few new people here tonight. You and I both know that the Sinclair Method has such a high success rate, and one of the things that we do, you're obviously in the States, I'm across here in the UK, is just trying to raise awareness for the Sinclair Method. Why do you think it's not having, or why is it, if it is so good, you'll get this question hundreds of times. If it is so good, why is it not the number one go-to model for recovery?
Well, I think there are several barriers to it, and it's such a good question because we get it asked all the time. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I asked that, like, if this, like, why haven't I heard of this before when I first started the treatment or when I first saw Claudia's TEDx talk about the treatment? And I think there's several things to it. Number one, the traditional kind of belief system and treatment industry, that's a multi-billion dollar industry that's been set up for nearly 100 years, is really based on abstinence. The first step toward recovery is going alcohol free or going without the substance. And then from there, you work the steps and you try to rebuild a life without it. But as you and I both know, that doesn't address the issue, which David Sinclair researched a lot, which is the alcohol deprivation effect, where the brain is essentially, when you go abstinent, you get deprived of the substance and you crave it more and want it more. So that's one reason. The traditional treatment system really requires abstinence as a first step. And like we talked about, with the Sinclair Method, you actually continue to drink. So that kind of like squashes 99.9% of treatment centers. They would have to really redesign their whole program. Another reason is that naltrexone is generic, so it's very cheap, and there's no major pharmaceutical brand behind it that has a huge budget to market it because it's generic. So there's not really money to be made to market the drug. And then also, the people who would be prescribing this medicine could be people's general practitioners. Of course, someone can go to an addiction specialist, but oftentimes they may not be aware of how to use naltrexone following the Sinclair Method. But oftentimes addiction or general doctors are not familiar with treating addiction, and they may not be comfortable treating addiction or be comfortable saying to their patient, oh yeah, you can still drink, just take this medicine beforehand. And it goes back to kind of this collective belief. I've heard a number of doctors say this, that they just believe abstinence is safest, it's the best option, which is true. It's probably better if we never eat processed sugar again, but what's realistic for people with alcohol. And so I think a lot of physicians just don't understand, again, back to the alcohol deprivation effect. In fact, when I was at this conference speaking to addiction specialists, I brought up the alcohol deprivation effect a lot, and many of them were not aware of it. There's been tons of research into this phenomenon, and these doctors who are working on the front lines, they're like, oh, I don't know what that is. So that's just really, really interesting to me. So I recently read an article that was published here in the States where one physician said, who promotes this treatment, that there's just a major disconnect between what's happening in the research world and then what's happening in the boots on the ground treatment world. So those are a few different reasons for why I see it's not very well known. I'm curious if there's more you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered most of it. And it's all, I think all of it, it's a little bit of everything thrown in the middle of it. And I think as well that there's also a 100-year process of, like you said, of abstinent-based programs. So when somebody comes along and says there's a program available with such a high success rate, a 78% success rate, you do get, well, I mean, I had worked in alcohol and drug rehab center management, and I didn't believe it either. And I said, well, surely I've worked in the industry for a while. I would have at least heard about it, if not seen it working, or there would have been somebody somewhere who had spoken about it. Yeah. So it's just that belief of I think for years and years we've been entrenched with this teaching method, the way of dealing with alcohol dependency, that when someone puts up their hand and says, I'm struggling with my alcohol intake, the immediate go-to option is stop drinking. Just stop drinking. And like you said, the alcohol deprivation effect, which very, very, very few people have, like you said, have heard about. But when you actually hear about what's going on from a neurological point of view, and then you start to understand the alcohol deprivation effect, you understand why people are constantly relapsing.
Yeah.
And then you understand why people would come into our rehab for 6 months, stay sober for 6 months, the first week that they would lose. But when you understand the effect and you understand what's happening from a neurological point of view, it's like, wow, it's like it opens everything up. Matt, who's here just now, he said it was like a jigsaw in the puzzle. He said he did this and he tried that and he tried abstinence and he tried, like yourself, tried all the different ways of doing things. And then all of them, when he found the Sinclair method and naltrexone, it was like the final jigsaw that all of a sudden the naltrexone regulated the endorphin in the brain that was causing all the issue in the first place. And yes, there are the other things that there are habitual stuff, there's emotional stuff, there's all of that needs to be dealt with. But if we're not dealing with the addiction side of the process, what's causing the addiction is in here. It's not an emotional thing. It's not something else. So if we don't deal with what's going on in here with medication, the revolving door is just going to keep revolving.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And that's the thing,
yeah.
like success with recovery has been measured as, oh, you're sober. Good job. You're having, day 1, day 2, day 3, you're doing well. But again, like you said, it's not dealing with what's going on in the brain. And so the person is likely suffering and struggling despite their deepest desire to get this under control. They're battling that urge to drink. And you hear people say, I'm just not going to drink today, or one day at a time. And, kind of white knuckling their way to sobriety and not, giving into the urge. But I've heard you say a number of times before that, the reason people relapse is because of the craving. It's, maybe there's an excuse because you had a stressful day, but if you didn't desire alcohol, you wouldn't relapse because of a stressful day. So I think the alcohol deprivation effect is such an important thing that needs to be talked about, and seems like it's largely ignored in the traditional treatment space.
And just for anyone, if anyone's listening, again, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to stick it in the chat. Just double check things in the chat as well. So if you are putting a question on here, this is live and you're watching through Facebook, it might show up in your feed. So if you are asking a personal question, just make sure that your settings are right. But just going back onto the alcohol deprivation effect, the thing that blew my mind with everything was that what causes alcohol addiction is that there's far too much endorphin in the brain, and the brain becomes dependent on that endorphin. So when you take that endorphin away from the brain then drops into what we call the alcohol deprivation effect. So basically, some people's brains are producing more endorphin than other people when they consume alcohol. Now, we weren't told that years ago. So people start drinking and drinking and drinking. The brain in some people is getting this huge endorphin reward. So then it's getting this huge reward. At some point, it tips over into dependency or into addiction. Now, addicted to the endorphin reward, not the alcohol. The alcohol is producing it. So then what happens is you take that endorphin from an individual on an abstinence-based program. With some people, it's a day or 2 days. Some people, it's a week. Some people, it's a month. When you take that endorphin reward away, the brain drops into craving. It then goes, hang on a minute, you've given me this massive reward for ages. You're now taking this pleasure effect away from me. And all of a sudden the brain goes, it goes into panic, anxiety, etc. That craving builds and builds and builds and builds. So when somebody relapses, they're relapsing because they can't fight the craving anymore. Now, they'll use a situation, they've had an argument, they've lost a job, they've something else, that they'll do that, they'll say that will justify why they're having the drink, but the reason that is because they can't anymore. And they have one drink, the reward just goes whoosh through the body. Katie will speak to people as well as I do. It's rush that goes through people's bodies. And then they have one drink and bang, they're into a full-blown relapse. And this is going round and round and round and round. And we've dealt with this way for the last 1935-ish.
Yeah.
Without fine a point on it. So Katie and I are just saying we need to change it. It needs to change. And the success that Katie will be seeing and Karen are seeing in the States to what we're seeing here in the UK is worldwide. So it's only a matter of time before it does kick in. But so yeah, can you give us any stories, Kate, of, without obviously mentioning any names, or just a recent or just a story of something that's happened with a client on the Sinclair Method, not compared to abstinence, but just through what you're doing?
What's coming up recently is a comment someone left in social media that I think just summarizes the experience of what it means to overcome alcohol addiction through the Sinclair Method. And I'll have to summarize it because I don't have the quote in front of me. Just a brief couple sentences. They said something like, I have gin, wine, vodka, Prosecco, beer, like this long list of alcohol. I have all these drinks, these beverages in my house, and I have zero desire to drink them. I haven't had any urge to drink in 8 weeks. And just comparing that to what it was like for them before TSM, if it was anything like me and what I've heard with other clients talk about is that you can't really keep liquor in the house. Like I used to buy a case of wine and I would polish off that thing in a couple weeks easily, maybe less than that. So it's like I was aware of every drop, every bottle, every ounce, and I was drinking them daily or as often as I possibly could. And so for this person to know that their bar is stocked essentially, but they've chosen to not drink for 2 months, not, oh, I'm resisting it, or I had to get all the alcohol out of the house and it's this forbidden fruit. It's a completely different way to go about it. Alcohol just loses its power. It becomes a non-issue, and it really empowers the individual with the choice to either say, yes, I will have a drink, or no, I'm not going to have a drink. And it's not doing it from the state of mind of like, I can't, or, I don't have control, or, kind of this resisting it and fighting the urge. So to me, like, that's why we've called our program the Alcohol Freedom Program, because it really feels like there's this freedom around it. You don't have the ball and chain of, feeling that compulsion or desire to drink anymore. Like this individual, they have the option to drink. My husband, he just had an event and he has like almost a case of like really good wine in our kitchen right now. It's probably like super expensive wine. And I was laughing the other day because I was cleaning the kitchen and there's all this wine sitting there, and it might as well be like a bottle of vinegar or something. I just have no emotional attachment to it. I just see it as a bottle sitting on my counter. And I was kind of like laughing, even being many years post extinction, it's just like, wow, like the amount of power this stuff used to have over me. And today it's like, I'm completely indifferent to it, which is just, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, if people are watching this either now or on on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, if someone has, if you've never had a struggle with alcohol, then you might not understand what Katie's saying. If you have had a struggle with alcohol, you will understand what Katie's saying.
Yeah, likely.
When it gets a hold of you, alcohol dependency is not, and Katie will repeat this as well, it is not a moral failing. It's not a person making lots of bad decisions. It's not a person just deliberately trying to be bad or ruin a marriage or upset parents or family members or deliberately lose a job. When the brain becomes dependent on the huge endorphin reward, it I don't know how you best describe it. It's like a noose around your neck. It will not let go. And I spoke to a guy the other day and he said, Bruce, he said, before I started on the Sinclair Method, he said, even before I got out my bed in the morning, he said, I had 20 minutes of a full-scale argument with myself, even before I got out of bed in the morning. Am I going to drink? No, I'm not going to drink. I'll have one. No, I won't. Maybe if I have a shandy or if I have a wine and soda, I'll be okay. And if I do this, and he said that was even before he got out of bed. So it's when it gets a hold of someone, and again, if you're watching this and what some people will say to Katie, I've spoken to enough, to say, well, from what you're saying, obviously you didn't really have a problem in the first place, because you can just take it or leave it, because we have it so ingrained into us that once you're dependent, there is no other option. So therefore, Katie couldn't have been dependent. I've got guys, and Katie's worked with people that you call it hard liquor in the States. We call it spirit in this country. that have been drinking a bottle of spirit a day, a bottle of vodka, a bottle of whiskey. I'm working with a guy at the moment, a bottle of whiskey a day. And he's down to 2 cans of beer on a Friday, 2 cans of beer on a Saturday. Just story after story after story. And it's not, I'll ask you, Katie, that when most people get down on an abstinence-based program, when they stop drinking, every single day as they go through is a battle. So from where you are at, now that you're obviously not drinking, you've mentioned it already, but I take it there's no, what's the difference between when you tried to stop before at an abstinence-based program and just now?
Yeah, well, like that client you described who had that internal battle before he even got out of bed, that's what sobriety was like before the Sinclair method. It was just this battle every day that was honestly exhausting because I was denying myself something that I really wanted. If anyone has fasted from food, it's like, the first day or half day might be easy, but the longer you go, you're like, ooh, I really want food. In fact, I did a fast once and I was literally craving steamed broccoli. That's how hungry I was. I never crave steamed broccoli. But it's that feeling. It was that feeling for me. And I hear it from many others as well of, kind of white knuckling sobriety where it's like an itch you have that you can't scratch. You're just like constantly thinking about drinking and you want to drink and you're resisting it. You're avoiding places, people, things, all of these situations that may cause you to drink. And again, it's not kind of like what you were saying earlier, you know, um, the person's brain is essentially hijacked. It's not that this person doesn't want to change. And I think that's something that our treatment system has done for a long time is kind of this punitive viewpoint on like, oh, well, you don't really want to change then if you're relapsing. But in my experience, like for years, I wanted to fix my drinking problem, but that part of the brain, which I now know was driving it, was overriding my logic and reason and my genuine desire to change because it was like a survival need to consume alcohol. So that's what it was like pre-TSM. And then through TSM, honestly, it really wasn't a battle throughout my whole journey on TSM, even when I first started and I was still drinking pretty much 7 days a week. Now, not to say it was easy by any means, but what I found through this treatment is that if I had that urge to drink, I could just surrender to it, take naltrexone, and let myself drink, knowing that by doing that, I was gradually de-addicting my brain. And so it felt so good to scratch that itch, to give into something that felt so natural, which was that alcohol craving. Because, like you were saying earlier, my brain had gotten used to the reward and it had gotten so used to it that it was prompting me to crave it every single day, thinking I needed that to survive. But over time through TSM, as I gained more control over alcohol, I would literally forget to drink. And I know how insane that can sound to some people, but it's really what happens to where, and maybe you've heard clients say this, it's like, oh yeah, I'll have a drink tonight. You take naltrexone, you pour it, and then like 2 hours go by, you're like, oh yeah, I poured that wine. I completely forgot about it. It's just it's a completely different way to go about it. And so today, I haven't drank in almost 5 years, I think. And it's really, I don't think about it. I don't smoke cigarettes, so it's not something that bothers me or that I think about. I'm not a smoker. And same today, I just don't think about alcohol. I have no desire. I have no fear that I'll relapse because I know if I really wanted to drink someday, I would just follow the protocol and maybe have 1 or 2 drinks and call it a night.
And that's just, I know I keep coming back to it, but if someone's here and you've got a loved one or a family member or a friend or someone who's going through it, please understand one thing. Excuse me. It's a choice that gets to a point where when the brain becomes dependent, just a very quick explanation is that the endorphin reward that the brain is getting apparently is the equivalent to heroin. So once the brain becomes dependent on it, if you can imagine the struggle that I've worked with guys with heroin addiction, you can see that the struggle that guys will have with the amount of endorphin that people are getting as a result of drinking alcohol. When that gets a grip of you, it's horrible. It becomes obsessive. It becomes something you think every minute of your waking hour. people will try and hide drink. They'll try and drink less or try and drink less in front of people. They will isolate themselves from people so that people aren't criticizing them that they're drinking. All of that, they're fighting their own battle as if to say, why can't I stop? What all my friends I'm speaking to, my family, they don't do this. Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? So it just starts, once it gets a grip of you and you can't stop, it just starts to eat away at everything in your life. You'll isolate yourself. It happens again and again and again. And the thing that really, really gets me is that today, because of the Sinclair method and because of the results that Katie's seeing in the States, we're seeing here, we're seeing it again and again and again. There is absolutely no reason why anybody should be struggling with alcohol dependency, none. And guys from here, you know that I've done some cycling, unicycling and stuff like that. We've got another event arranged for 6 weeks' time. And we will do as much as we can in this country to raise the awareness for the Sinclair method here. And I know Katie and Karen are doing everything they can do to do the same in the States. But there is absolutely no reason why anybody should be struggling with alcohol dependency, or AUD as you call it, anywhere in the world. So, and Katie's living proof. I know there's other people here, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are other people here tonight who they've been through the process as well. And compared, I loved the time when I worked in the rehab centers, absolutely loved it. The people I worked with were absolutely incredible. The guys that would come into the rehab, absolutely amazing people. But it was so sad looking back on it, the number of times people would come in, they would leave and relapse, come back in again, leave, relapse. It was a revolving door. And it doesn't need to happen. If we can get something across today, is that it doesn't need to happen. And if anyone can help us spread the word or do anything, then we're open to anything. Well, most things.
Honestly, yeah. It's so
sorry,
true.
went off on one.
No, it's great.
Went off on one there.
Hi, Jane.
She's a lovely lady too. Absolutely lovely lady. So thank you, Jane. Appreciate that. Go say what else? Another topic. Give us another topic.
Yeah, well, just as a response to that, I think because I've been, in this field for like advocating for it, and maybe for about 5 years, I basically started documenting my journey and connecting with people when I started the method in 2017. But a question I get pretty much every day is, why haven't I heard of this before? And I think that you're so spot on that if this was seen as a frontline treatment, that was another comment I got from someone. Oh, if it works so well, every doctor would be screaming this from the rooftops and it would be frontline treatment everywhere you go. Which you would think so, but it's not. But it's just, I have that vision to see it as a frontline treatment where in every emergency room, people are given the option, like if you honestly don't think you can quit drinking today, if you're in there for alcohol poisoning or DUI or whatever, do you know there's medications that can get you, on a better path? And I just think, while it's not going to work 100% of the time for everyone, if it can be a treatment that's offered, if you go to your GP or an addiction clinic or the emergency room, it's just, it could change the world. Like there's millions of people suffering with alcohol addiction. The statistics show that 80% or more of people relapse within 6 months of leaving treatment, of course, due to the alcohol deprivation effect, like we've talked about. So to really eliminate the need or the potential of a relapse, if someone can just start on this medication, it's incredible. And I've seen, success stories, so many of them over the years, of people who they say this is their last hope. They've tried everything. They've been to rehab 6 times, they've done to AA, they were hopeless. And then this is the treatment that they figured, okay, well, I'll try this. I've tried everything else. And it was the answer that they'd been looking for. So it's just, it's incredibly powerful how it works. And I'm so grateful to Dr. Sinclair for the research that he did, not only with the alcohol deprivation effect, but figuring out how to address that issue through the method.
And there's another video on YouTube that I and it's one of my favorite videos, was if you go to YouTube, Claudia Christian, The Hijacked Brain.
Mm-hmm.
It was a YouTube video that Claudia did just because, and she talks about what is alcohol dependency or AUD and how it impacts on it. If you do go and watch it, take your tissues with you. It really an impact. Again, a lot of people listening to this will know who Claudia Christian is. An amazing lady, an actress in America who was in Babylon 5 and way back before Katie's time, something called A-Team and Das and all that kind of. She had walk-on parts, I believe, in them as well. She's in a program 911 or something just now. So she's had a good career in filming, but she has used the Sinclair Method, and she's got a few videos, a TED Talk on YouTube. But she did one called The Hijacked Brain, which will into it will, if you depend, or if you know, watch that video, because that really goes to the heart of how it will impact an individual on a day-to-day basis of what it does. The number one thing that Katie and I have to deal with, not have to deal with, but when we start working with people is thanks, Steve. I'm guessing that's the link to it. The number one thing we have to work with clients with is helping them overcome the guilt and through as the result of what they're going through. And it's just getting people to that point where we can say, do you know, it's okay. What someone does under the influence of alcohol, responsibility. Absolutely. We need to take responsibility for that. However, of what is going on from the addiction side of it, not an individual's fault. And if we can get nothing else across today, I've come up with a new expression. It's a progressive neurological condition of the brain. It's not willpower. It's not a choice. It's not anything else like that. So, how many times did you try stopping, Katie, before you found the same?
I think dozens, honestly, because I was a daily drinker, but I was also a binge drinker. And so like even on work days, but I would often binge drink till blackout and do and say things ridiculous that I would regret and make me feel so much shame that I would say, okay, this is it, I'm not drinking. And some days I would make it 3 days, other times a week. One time I made it 6 months, but I had probably dozens of attempts at quitting over the course of a 10-year period. And each time I would be so resolved that this was going to be the time, and would be really trying to like seek out other things in life and, get in that mindset that this was going to be it. But inevitably I would give in to the urge again. And, one thing I want to say that's coming up in my mind is, talking about the fact that while naltrexone and the Sinclair Method are incredibly powerful, there's no treatment out there that can touch the effectiveness of this treatment. Speaking to the fact also that it's not a magic pill, and it's not something that everyone is going to get on and in 6 months they're going to feel cured. Some people will get there even sooner than that. But other people, and I think I've really started to appreciate this more as we've been guiding people through the treatment through our program, because people have lifetime access. So they're with us for as long as it takes, similar to you, I know. So seeing the people who have started the method, they've seen great progress. Maybe their drinking is down 30%, 50%, but maybe they're a year in and they can see that naltrexone is working, but they can also see that they want to just get drunk every night. And so they're relying on the pill. They're still taking the pill, but they're recognizing that the pill isn't, going to help them create a new evening ritual or a new coping tool. So I think sometimes what happens for people is they get started on this treatment and they have, I know I kind of did like rose-colored glasses of like, this is it. Like, this is the answer. I'm going to be free. And it's definitely where this treatment definitely takes people there to that freedom, but it's not always this glamorous journey. And in fact, I think there's challenges for many of us that come up, and just want to speak to that because what I've seen happen in our program particularly is the people who are on the method long term, a year or more. And again, they've seen progress. They're not giving up. They're committed, but they can get discouraged because they maybe look at the person who was cured in 3 months or 6 months and, cured, I use that word carefully, but they look to those people and they think, oh, I'm a failure compared to them, essentially. And I think that's just human nature for us to feel that way. And so to really honor that, this treatment is wildly effective, but it's not an overnight fix, because it's really changing for many of us, like every aspect of our life, because alcohol has touched every aspect of our life. When we're happy, when we're sad, when we're lonely, it's what we do every night. It's part of our identity. For me, I felt like alcohol and drinking were my passion. I didn't know what else I'd like to do. So there's a lot of change that can come as a result of simply drinking less alcohol and going on the method. So just honoring that and wanting to say that that is absolutely okay. I tell people there's no rush to extinction. This is a process that we want to help people make sustainable change, kind of like with weight loss. Like, sure, you could crash diet and lose 30 pounds in a month, but how sustainable is that? If have your habits and behaviors caught up, it's better to probably lose weight at a slower pace and gradually have a lifestyle change. I always compare it to a weight loss journey, but just wanted to speak to that because I think the end result of the Sinclair method, like, it's really easy for me and others to want to sing it from the rooftop, but to not discount, like, for me, the year-long journey that took me there and all of the tears and the difficulty and the frustration and the therapy that led up to where I am today. It wasn't just me kicking back, taking naltrexone and being, oh, I'm good. It was a lot more than that. But it was worth it 1,000,000%. And I would do it again and again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember very early on, it was actually in one of your meetings in the early days, Katie. There was, and I can never remember her name, but she came on and she said that there's two sides to alcohol dependency, or AUD. One side is the physical addiction, which is the neurological, the brain, the body, the physical side of addiction. Yeah. The other side is the habitual side of it. And when I was working in rehab and abstinence-based programs, the abstinence-based programs, they do a lot of work on the habitual, emotional, psychological side and the program side of things. Yeah. But they're not dealing with the physical craving and addiction side of it, which is what naltrexone does. So what Katie's program does and what we do here in the UK is that we work on the habitual side of the whole process. So that habitual side is not just habits. Habits is a big part of it, but it's also to do with emotional situations, psychological situations. And I always say to people, I said, the hardest thing with the Sinclair method is not the addiction. It's not the craving and the addiction side of it, because all you have to do for that one is swallow a pill. That it will deal with the physical side of the whole process. Swallow a pill and it will deal with that. However, like Katie's saying, that doesn't result in perfect solution. There still has to be a number of months of habitual, emotional, psychological change. So we will put people, I know the majority of Katie and Karen's program is all to do with the change process. So, and then what we do is we work with guys in that change process as well. So we're changing habits, we're changing places, and just lots of different habitual stuff that people do. But as people are reducing their alcohol intake, it's also very, very important that that individual from an emotional and psychological place is safe and they're emotionally. So sometimes as people are reducing, it's just the addiction side that they need to deal with. Now, some people, as they're reducing, may need additional therapy, additional counseling, additional support to deal with the emotional side or things that have happened in the past. A lot of ex-service guys, there's a lot of PTSD that needs to be dealt with. So that needs to be dealt with by professional people in that area or in that field. So yeah, so you're right, Katie. It's not just a case of swallowing a pill, but the beautiful thing with the process is that when I worked in the abstinence-based side of it, that we could never get to the point where we could help someone with their PTSD or help someone with trauma or help somebody with, because we couldn't keep them sober long enough. And we can't put someone through counseling, a period of counseling, if they're relapsing every 2 weeks. So the beautiful thing with the Sinclair method is we can reduce them down so that we can then get the support for that. And then the other thing I was going to say was the nice thing with the Sinclair method is with abstinence, you're drinking, and then you stop. And then you've got to deal with the withdrawal, the craving, and life and the emotional stuff as well. The nice thing with the Sinclair method is you can reduce at a speed that is comfortable for each individual. So that's why it's different for some people. Some people will go much quicker than others. It depends on their home situations, their past. Are they going through a divorce? They're not going through a divorce, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, thanks, Katie. That was I tend to go off and go, woo, it's amazing.
Yeah, me too, honestly. The reality of it.
It is. Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
It's just a very, very kind. It's a very kind and gentle process. I spoke to a lady today she's been on naltrexone for 2 weeks, and she's not sober yet, she said. And I said, right, okay, it's going to take 3, 6, 9 months. And I said, we just want you to make a little change every single week. And she was so worried that she was going to have to make this huge, massive change because she's been so used to using alcohol to get her through life up until now that she's so frightened to have life without the alcohol. Now she knows she shouldn't be drinking. So this is the inner conflict that goes on with people. That it's like, I know I shouldn't be doing this. I'm drinking far too much every single day. But then I've tried stopping drinking before, and then it just emotionally, psychologically was so hard. It's a constant conflict. But the Sinclair method, we can reduce a client at a very, very safe, comfortable environment. And then if there is additional support needed, we can signpost people onto that, no problem. So, and I know Katie and Karen do it in the States. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, just the same. It's a very gentle process. And so it's not like we're asking people to, give up alcohol and figure everything else out. It's like very little gradual changes over time. And sometimes people have to, stay at a plateau for a while, and that's okay as well. Because I think there's a lot to be learned there. There's not, a need to make progress and success and reduce your drinking every week. And in fact, I just put a video out on YouTube recently about how the method is not only about drink reduction, yes, that's a part of it, but, we're also changing, like we've talked about, our mindset, our lifestyle choice changes. And so I think sometimes we can get so hyper-focused on the drink numbers and, oh, I'm at a plateau or my drinks are up this week. And yes, that's important, but it's kind of important as a part of like a bigger picture of, okay, well, are you drinking later in the day? Are you feeling better? Are you having fewer hangovers? Not just focusing on how much am I drinking this week, because that can be discouraging because honestly, it does plateau and it does go up and down for most of us on the method for quite a while.
I just want to tell you a quick story as well. That it was, I find it when I'm working with people now, I find it fascinating. As people are reducing on the Sinclair method, I've had 2 people recently that said, "I'm going away on holiday. What do I do?" And I'm really worried about going away on holiday. I've dropped 60% of my alcohol intake. I'm going away on holiday. I normally just drink when I'm on holiday. What do I do? So I say, I've got the habit now. If they're 90 days into the program or more, I'll say to them, okay, take your pill, wait an hour, and then drink. Just go and enjoy your holiday. Go and have a good bit of. Go and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Every single one of them comes back after the holiday, and they say, not that they needed my permission, but they'll say, Bruce, you gave me permission to go and drink what I wanted to on my holiday. Because my drinking level has dropped from here down to here, when I go away on holiday with the thought of I can drink what I want, they then go away. The first day they try and do it and it doesn't work because the brain's just not used to it anymore. And there's no craving, there's no white knuckling it. They then end up drinking a lot less because they're busy and everything else. And they come back and said, you knew that was going to happen. I said, well, yeah, I've been doing it long enough now. But the reason I'm saying that is that you cannot go wrong on the Sinclair method as long as you stay 100% compliant with the medication. Can you relapse on the Sinclair method? Absolutely, if you stop taking the medication. But Dr. Sinclair found that, did he? No, I might be out of line when I say that one. But from my experience, I've never seen anybody relapse on the on the Sinclair method. I'm not sure if Dr. Sinclair had any. I need to go and double check that one. But as long as you're taking the medication, you're not going to relapse, and you'll drop a little bit. You might maintain a little bit. You might go up a little bit for a day or two. But so what I'm trying to say is it allows the grace for you to have a bad day. If you have a bad day on an abstinent-based program, you're in big trouble. Big trouble.
And the trick for me, honestly, was learning to not beat myself up through those, because I feel like with alcohol, it had me in such a negative state of mind that my thoughts would automatically go to, what's wrong with you? You're such a failure. Why did you let that happen? Automatically, unconsciously, that's where my thoughts would take me, and it would spiral me out. I might feel more depressed. I might want to drink, just kind of beat myself up. And I started to become aware of that the longer I was on the method. And what is so empowering, I think, is that we can choose what we want to believe and what we think and what we focus on. And it's like a muscle we have to strengthen over time, and it takes practice. But I first started by just noticing that those thoughts were automatically playing out. Oh, I drank too much last night. Why, go in this negative spiral, and I would just notice it, and I would learn to stop it and redirect it. Okay, what did I learn from it? What was the silver lining? How's my progress, this month compared to last month? Just taking a step back to look at it with a different perspective, because I think at least I wasn't aware of what a negative frame of mind my drinking had me in, and that it was really kind of running on autopilot. And I had to have the, awareness and effort, and put forth the effort to redirect those thoughts. But I think for people to be aware of, where you're starting the method, and that this can happen. I just see, people make comments sometimes like, oh, I feel like it's such a failure. I feel like I'm never going to get this. And honestly, that's valid to feel that way, because it's a long-term treatment protocol. For some people, they're on it a year or two, and that's a long time to be going through something and navigating the judgment and frustration. But if we can start to recognize that these negative thought patterns are likely a result of, alcohol's impact on our psyche and our well-being, and just, teach ourselves to think about things from a different perspective, it can really be helpful. I think that having a healthy mindset, and I know that's kind of like, well, what does that even mean? But there's many different things and nuances to what a healthy mindset looks like. And there's a lot of psychology out there that describes that. But I think for people to be aware that that's really important, that alcohol often gets us in this, negative frame of mind a lot. And so how can we not only reduce our drinking, but, help ourselves get into a better state of mind?
What would you, again, this is probably going to sound like a very obvious question, but what would you find, or what do you feel is the best part of the process that's helped you?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Obviously the drinking side of it, but
So can you say more so I can answer? Like, what do you mean exactly by the question?
just anything specifically that the Sinclair method has taught you that you hadn't learnt before, or that's benefited you from the actual program itself?
I think it really taught me how, like, I think there might be a book about this or something, but I really honestly just felt deceived by alcohol. Like, I really had it on its pedestal, but now I understand it's simply because my brain was hijacked by it. It was wired to crave alcohol. I literally thought that life would be depressing and boring without alcohol, and that was true for me. Even when I was 6 months sober, the longest stretch I had before TSM, of course, I had good times. I was focused on my health. I was trying to grow, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I can't wait till I drink again. Like, it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of how long I can go. So even in that sobriety, alcohol was still on its pedestal. So what I think the Sinclair method did for me, and I recently published an article in our program about it, was it opened up a whole new world for me that I didn't know that existed, a world full of genuine joy and happiness and pain and disappointment that could be navigated without reaching for a substance or feeling like I was reliant on alcohol, that ball and chain. And so I think for me, just that belief shift of that life is actually really great without alcohol. But it was because I was living in this like box of alcohol addiction. I feel like it really closed me in, and I was just living for my drink every day. I was, what time can I drink? When am I going to drink? Where am I going to drink? Do I need to go to the store? Like that was my world for nearly 10 years. And to realize that that was just this like jail cell I was in, I started to get a glimpse outside of it with the Sinclair Method. And that was so exciting to see this whole other world that's out there that, had been there, but I was just really stuck in this pattern of living for that reward for alcohol. So I think for me, just that realization and learning that, whoa, alcohol was really trapping me in a little box, and life is actually really incredible and amazing without it, or with less of it. Like people don't have to quit drinking to get that insight. In fact, I see people start to discover it. The more they're progressing on TSM, they'll start to get glimpses of it, and that can be really motivating and encouraging.
It's fascinating speaking to people who like I've never been through the Sinclair Method, but I had a drug issue in my 20s.
Yeah.
But I can understand sort of the addiction side of it. But it's absolutely fascinating speaking to people who have been through, and the stories are very, very individual, but very, very similar with everybody in regards to what you're saying. You're caught in this cell, and I remember someone phoned me up once, and they said, "Bruce, I've been through abstinence for I think about 3 years. They'd stopped for, and they said, life when I was drinking was hell. It was just I was messing around with my family. I was drinking and wasting all the stuff that comes with it." Yeah. And then they said, when I stopped drinking on an abstinence-based program for 3 years, the challenge with abstinence is when people stop, they then think the world then thinks you're fixed. You've stopped now, so therefore everything's okay. Let's crack on. But what this lady said to me, she said, when I was drinking, it was hell. When I stopped drinking, it was hell. It was just a different sort of hell. And it was because the craving was still there. Every single day that she was stopped drinking. Now, the family were like, "Oh, you're doing so well. Well done. Keep going." And she was looking outside and going, "Yep, everyone else thinks I'm doing really well, but they don't understand what's going on in here. I am struggling from hour to hour to hour every day." And like you say, that it's a horrible, horrible place to be. And the number one thing I know with working with clients on the Sinclair Method is the battle that they go through. Every client that I take on, the very first thing I say to them is, "It's not your fault." And the number of times people just burst into tears, and because for the first time they've met someone or spoken to someone who, number one, understands the process in the brain, and then number two, that has actually said to them, "It's not your fault." And to so many people, that's a revelation, because it is, like Claudia says on the YouTube. Claudia breaks down halfway through the video, and you can see her when she's talking. She's reliving what it's like when she was drinking a lot, and how much damage it did to self-esteem, etc., etc. And it doesn't need to be happening today. It's I did a post on, I shouldn't have done it really, but I did a post on a social media thing, and I found a car that had been built in 1935, a beautiful old, I don't know what it was, Ford or something. It was a beautiful car. It was a 1935 car, and I stuck a picture on it, and it was nice to look at and everything else. And then and I said, but what's happened since 1935 in the car industry is that mechanics has moved forward. The shape of the cars moved forward. The engines have moved forward. The mechanics of it all, the gadgets that we've got in the car, everything has moved forward. So today in 2023, we've got electric cars that can near enough drive themselves, and everything has moved forward. And the thing that Katie and I are all trying to say here is that medicine, neuroscience, everything, the research, the Sinclair Method comes on the back of 30 to 40 years of research. And so it's not something that's just, it's moved on since the 1930s. The last 100 years, every single model that we use for recovery today is an offshoot of what came out of what was started in 1935. So every abstinence-based model, whether it's rehab, you might get Buddhist, you might get Christian rehabs, you might get horse therapy rehabs, you might get other therapy rehabs, you might get work therapy rehabs, all these different models, but they're not dealing with what's in here. And those are good models. If they had naltrexone, they would be incredible.
Exactly. So, I see David Belenke's here. I just want to say hello. Like, so good to have you here. Yeah, living proof, 6 years on TSM. I've told he has his success story on my YouTube channel, but awesome individual. Great to see your name pop up.
So yeah, hi David, and I've seen your name coming up with Claudia occasionally. So
yeah,
right, David, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Probably yeah.
So okay, time's gone again.
I know.
Wisdom. Your final worldwide TSM wisdom.
Yeah, I think for both individuals who are on the method or considering it and their loved ones as well, I would just say to educate yourself, because knowledge is power with this treatment. And all you need to do is really understand the basic science of what's going on in the brain when someone develops an alcohol addiction, and also the science of why the Sinclair method is the perfect match to help someone unlearn the addiction and de-addict the brain. I think when people have that information, it makes sense. It's logical to most of us, so I think whatever side of the fence you're on, just to have that basic understanding so you can advocate for yourself or your loved one, or just understand more why this treatment is so effective, and why perhaps traditional treatments or just abstinence hasn't worked in the past. Again, whether that's for you or for a loved one, it's not due to the fact that they don't want it necessarily, or that they're weak or that they're a bad person. It's just the brain is hijacked to crave alcohol, and when that happens, like Bruce was talking about, it's like a survival need. It becomes this compulsion that is beyond logic and reason. And so understand why that's all happening and what's going on in the brain. And The Cure for Alcoholism is a great place to understand that. It talks about the alcohol deprivation effect, that book by Roy Escapa. You can also get it on Audible. So that's my last words. What about you, Bruce? Oh, there you go. There it is. The medically proven way to eliminate alcohol addiction.
Katie and I don't make a penny off this book, by the way.
No.
So please read it for the information there.
Yeah.
I was going to say something really deep and wise and meaningful, and it's gone.
No.
Just to say that when I first heard about the Sinclair method, I thought, what an absolute utter load of rubbish. And I actually got really, really angry when I heard about it, because I thought it was they were promoting a 78% success rate, a clinically trialed 78% success rate. And I said, that's the biggest load of utter rubbish. And that's the polite version that I've ever heard or seen in my life. And I did the research, like Katie's saying. All we can say is do the research. Go and have a look at the research. Go and have a look at the science. Go and have a look at the neuroscience of what causes addiction, and how the Sinclair method and how naltrexone works in regards to that whole process. Everything you look at will just blow your mind. It will go, wow, that's true. I understand. Oh, wow, okay, yep, makes sense. And then down the track, you'll go through a whole bunch of different emotions with it. You'll go from that's not true to, wow, this is incredible, to you'll get really angry at some stage, and you'll say, well, listen, hang on a minute, this is as good as they say it is. Why is it not out there? So you'll go through a whole bunch of different emotions. But just know, if you or a loved one or someone is struggling with alcohol dependency, I'm not saying don't go to rehab or don't go to AA or CA or SMART meetings. For some people, they're great. But if I had a family member today that came to me and said, Bruce, what do you think the best option is? I've worked in the abstinence-based programs. I would say the best option available today for anybody is the Sinclair method. Now, whether you do it with Katie and I, doesn't really matter, but just do it with somebody. So on that as well, Katie, in America or wherever, tell us quickly about what you do.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. And same, like, regardless of whether someone's doing the Sinclair Method through my program or yours, like, we just, like, I've been an advocate since day one, essentially. And if someone tells me they got it from their doctor and they're starting, I'm equally as happy as when someone decides to join our program. So this is something that you don't need a program to do, but obviously we created the program because it's definitely beneficial, and it can prevent a lot of unnecessary mistakes and just give somebody the support so they know that they're not alone. We have people who join our program who they haven't told anyone they're struggling, and we're their only kind of lifeline, and having the chance to connect with others who can relate and know what it's like to struggle and are also using the Sinclair Method. That's just very, very healing. One of our members a couple weeks ago on a live group call said, this is better than any therapy I've ever gotten because I can be honest. I'm not being judged. I can tell you guys how much I'm drinking, and you'll listen and you'll support me. And so that, that's the type of environment we've created in our program. We're not here to judge or force someone along or, tell them what their drinking goals should be. We're here to empower the individual to decide it for themselves. And then we'll just give them the guidance and the tools and the resources to do that. So that's a bit about how our program works here. And it's technically a worldwide program, but we do work with physicians who are based in the US and Canada. So if you still need a prescription, we'll refer you to a provider depending on what your need is and what you're looking for. So that's a bit about Thrive. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it.
No problem.
Did you want to share about yours as well, Bruce?
Yeah, I am the founder of Alcohol Recovery Scotland. We've been running for 4 years. We're a one-to-one program where I work on a one-to-one basis with clients. We are in the process with someone that was here earlier on. We're in the process of developing a second organization to work alongside Alcohol Recovery Scotland at this stage. So as that develops and as news comes out, we'll let everyone know more about that as it comes out. But we are scheming positively. I think scheming in this country has quite a negative thing. We're working on some stuff behind the scenes that we should be able to make it sort of a much bigger announcement shortly. So that's that side of it. And then also next Tuesday, I believe it is, I'm with Katie on Katie's channel. So do you want to mention that one quickly, just in case anyone wants to join your channel for that one?
Yeah, so Bruce and I will do a live Q&A on Thrive's YouTube channel and Facebook. So if you type in Thrive Alcohol Recovery, you'll see our Facebook page or our YouTube. But we're doing that next Tuesday. It's at 12 p.m. Pacific in the US and 8 p.m. UK time. And that's really a Q&A session where we have people come and ask us questions in the comments. Often we get a lot of great questions. So wherever you're at on the method, if you have questions or you just want to hear what others are asking, that's a great place to do that. So again, that's next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Pacific in the US and 8 p.m. UK time.
I've just noticed somebody is on here. Can I just say a massive congratulations to a lady who I used to work with, and she's on the channel, and I know she's recently married. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
And next time you bring your dog and your new husband anywhere near our house, let me know, and we'll take the dogs out for a walk and we can say hello again. It'd be good to see you. Okay. Thank you very much, Katie, again.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me on.
And we'll see anyone that can make it next Tuesday. If anyone's got any questions at all, if you're in the UK and you need to speak to me, alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, or if you're in the States, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. If you've got any questions, you'd like any more information about it, please feel free just to get in touch. So, okay, thanks, everyone. Katie.
Bye, all.